said that the military is facing a death spiral when it comes to the personnel issue. Do you still believe the military is facing?
No, let me be very clear in my remarks. When I said that continuing on the path of having more people leave you than you actually recruit and hire each year is not sustainable, and it is not. And that's one of the reasons General Carignan and her team have done outstanding work, I believe, in making sure that we address the standards and how they are applied, our security background checks, the training capacity for our members. There is, I think, we'll hear very shortly about new initiatives to increase our capacity to bring people on board the Canadian Armed Forces. We need them desperately. And that urgency is felt by every member of the Canadian Armed Forces. If we continued on the path we were on, it was unsustainable, a death spiral. But quite frankly, what I had hoped to achieve has been achieved. There is a renewed sense of urgency and importance of this initiative, and I believe that the right steps are going to be taken to make sure that we have and get the people that we need.
On Lebanon, is there any military plan in place to be able to evacuate the thousands of Canadians?
Yeah, I was briefed on it very extensively earlier today. We've been working on this now for several months as we watched tensions continue to grow in the region. We've also been working very closely in collaboration with Global Affairs. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs has been very outspoken in asking Canadians in Lebanon to get to a place of safety while there is still commercial operations. Those commercial operations still exist, by the way. There were approximately 72 flights leaving the Beirut airport over the last 48 hours. And so it is still possible for Canadians who wish to get out of harm's way to do so. But we are also planning in the event of any eventuality that we'll be ready. We've been working very closely with allies. We've staged and continue to stage resources in order to respond appropriately. We have the appropriate authorities now from the Lebanese government and from some of our regional partners to make sure that we can do what is necessary. At the same time, we'll be prepared for any eventuality, but we are all working towards maintaining peace and stability in the region.
You've been telling folks for months now to get out of Lebanon. In the possibility that there will be evacuations, why would the Canadian government do that? You've been very clear, leave, and it would be an extensive cost to remove people who've been told for months to get out of Lebanon.
We have been giving people advice that they should leave. But we have a responsibility to Canadians around the world. And if Canadians find themselves in harm's way, the Canadian government will be there to support them.
How does the Air Canada pilot settlement affect the Royal Canadian Air Force's efforts to retain pilots?
Well, we also know that we need to recruit more pilots, but it's not just simply pilots, actually. And I've had extensive conversations with General Kennedy about what the Royal Canadian Air Force is going to need. Every plane that we have acquired, and just in the last 2 years, we've signed contracts to acquire up to 200 new aircraft for the Air Force. It's the largest reconstitution of our Air Force since the Second World War. But we're going to need people to maintain those aircraft. Every plane requires a pilot, but it also requires hundreds of staff to make sure that we can maintain them, keep them serviceable, and to do all the important work that allow the pilot and the plane to perform its important missions. And so it's a lot of work that we have to do, but again, we've been working very closely with the Air Force and with the CDS to come up with new recruitment plans. I'm very confident that Canadians want to serve. We need to be able to communicate to them that there is a real opportunity for an extraordinary career in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I think the choice to serve, there's no higher calling than service to your country. And I believe that if we give that opportunity to Canadians and we make it easier for them to join, to be trained, and to get to work on behalf of the country, that Canadians will respond.
Or was that D&D retention package impacted?
Well, and retention is also critically important because we've got some extraordinary people, and I want to keep them in service as long as they are able. And in order to do that, we've got to make it possible for them to, we shouldn't make it difficult for people to serve. And we've heard from our Armed Forces members how challenging it can be to get affordable housing in or near their workplace, for example, to be able to access childcare on their bases, and some of the challenges that their families have experienced with education and health care, and with the transfers that are taking place. It's really important that we work with every member of the Canadian Armed Forces to make sure that we respond appropriately. We are making very significant investments in their housing, in childcare, in the services that are necessary to support them. We'll continue to do that work with them because keeping the good people that we've got is also an important part of our success.
On Lebanon, sir, you mentioned that you were briefed this morning. Does the Canadian government have any visibility on the number of people, Canadians who are still in Lebanon right now? And do you have an estimate on the number of people you might need to evacuate?
Well, I think there are, I don't have a precise number, and I apologize for that, but there are approximately 40,000 people that we've identified that have strong connections to Canada, Canadian citizenship, or close family members. And so that's the total number. That's not to suggest that we would have to remove all 40,000 people. There are some people, there are areas of conflict that are more concerning to us, particularly in the south of Lebanon. But it will really depend on what transpires, but we'll be ready to respond to any eventuality if there is a necessity to assist Canadians to leave the area. There are a number of different ways in which that can be done. It's scalable, and we'll be ready and stood up to scale it as required.
Should Canada's defence industry be on war footing, and how do you get there?
I think we should be on war prevention footing. I think one of the best ways to deter the aggressive actions of some of our adversaries is to be prepared. And there is some significant work that Canada and all of its allies have to do. I think we've heard some open source reporting just today, but it's been an ongoing discussion for several months. Even in our most recent defense policy update on our Strong and Free, we talked about the need to increase production in Canada of ammunition, of other munitions, of vehicles and other equipment. That we need to invest in our industry. I met with industry quite extensively about this. They told us that they needed some clarity, they needed certainty, they needed to know where we were going, what we were going to require, and they needed the certainty that came with money for long-term contracts. And so we not only issued our defense policy in April, but we come out in the budget of April 24 with new defense spending and commitments that I hope provides industry with that certainty. The work is now ongoing between us. We are continuing to meet with those who, for example, are responsible for ammunition production in this country. They have told us what they need, and it's an investment in their production lines, more security of their critical supply chains, and the certainty of long-term contracts. We have those resources, and those negotiations are taking place now.
And can you go into more detail about what exactly is going on that you can tell that only 6,400 people can get through basic training? Like, what's happening there?
Well, I think for a period of time, the basic training has been calibrated to the number of people that they were able to onboard. It's very clear we have to bring in more people. The Canadian Armed Forces tell us they're short right now about 14,000 people, but we also anticipate that in the future, and the work that we are undertaking now in our Strong and Free and continuing with the work of our Strong, Secure and Engaged Defense Policy of 2017, we're going to need more sailors, more airmen, more Air Force support crews, and we have to make significant new investments in our Army. We're going to need people to do that, and with those new investments, with those new capabilities that Canada requires, we're going to need more people, and therefore the pace at which we've been onboarding people in the past is not going to be sufficient. We have to do better, and we're going to do better, and that's why I've asked the Chief of Defense to come up with a new plan. Not only to increase our capacity to onboard the people that we need, but also to provide them with the training, the resources, the equipment, and the housing, and the childcare, and all of the things that they're going to need so that they can serve their country.
Are there any questions on today's announcement or today's ceremony?
Yeah, can we answer
Yeah, please.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Major-General Yarker, the ASEAN summit's coming up, and one of the big issues that some of the countries like the Philippines are facing is the cyber threats, especially from China. What can Canada offer some of those countries? What more needs to be done to help protect them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I talked at the opening about sort of the scope and scale of the threat. One of the things that Canada, and in particular the Canadian Armed Forces, have been doing pretty proactive is, under the Indo-Pacific strategy, supporting some countries in that nation. We've done a number of partnered activities with Japan. Really the secret to cyber defense, and it's not much of a secret, is that partners and allies help. And therefore what Canada can bring is some of our expertise, some of our knowledge, and some of our activity. And those are things that we are doing today.
And what has Canada learned that you want to share with some of those countries? And is there any commitments that you're going to be offering?
Yeah, so I guess the number one lesson that we've learned, it came from our early work with our partners in Latvia actually, is just the centrality of trust in the conduct of cyber operations. So really, as we conduct cyber defense engagements across the world, one of our key opening activities is to conduct the kinds of contacts and work with our partners to build that trust that allows for effective cyber defense operations down the path. Obviously, in terms of commitments, I have nothing sort of specific here in terms of our ongoing operations. What I would say, though, is that the growth of the cyber force, and indeed the stand-up of a cyber command, is intended in no small way to provide focus so that we can do the things that are most impactful and most important.
And how would you describe to a Canadian audience who doesn't know a lot about cyber threats, what the single biggest threat Canada is facing right now is?
Okay, so single biggest threat is a very difficult thing because there's a lot of different threats. I guess what I would say is that we all live in the cyber environment today. Our lives are mediated online, and frankly, you need to be aware of the threats that are out there. That takes a bit of self-education. Certainly that's one of our key tasks inside the Canadian Armed Forces, is ensuring that our members get the kind of training, knowledge, and support that they need in order to be able to live and operate effectively and safely in the cyber domain.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here today.
And it did.